Morning, everybody. So Manx Wildlife Trust are obviously based on the Isle of Man. This is the work we've been doing recently around Eelgrass. Well, I say recently, it's been ongoing for quite some time actually. So for those of you who probably don't know, it's just a very quick slide. We're the main and leading nature conservation charity on the Isle of Man. It is our 50th year, so happy birthday to us. And we're going from strength to strength. From a terrestrial bit, we have 28 nature reserves now, which covers about 500 acres. So we're doing quite well. We're, I think, the second smallest after Alderney, so we achieve a lot for our size, I think. So a bit about our work. So Manx eelgrass, we only have Zostra marina in Manx waters. So that's a subtidal species. We don't have any intertidal. And we have 5 areas you can see here from. So this is Ramsey Bay in the north. This is Bulgham Bay, Laxey, Fort Island and Derby Haven area, and then Guernsey here. So they all vary in size. So the Fort Island, Derby Haven area, we've got quite small beds. They're quite distinctive, very distinctively marked. Whereas you go up to Ramsey, which is our largest bed, it covers a huge area and it's very scattered. You have big clumps and then it sort of spreads out and thins out. So it's all quite different habitat. Ramsey's quite sort of sandy, Bulgham and Laxey are the same, whereas we've got more sort of mixed substrate down here. And then when you get to Guernsey, it's all mixed in and sort of has this protection with some sort of rocky outcrop areas. So quite diverse areas that we find them, and the depths that we're finding them vary slightly as well. So Fort Island's about 1 metre below low tide, but Ramsey's a bit deeper than that, maybe 8 metres or so. So it does vary a little bit. And they're all within M&Rs except for Bulgham Bay. So this map here shows the dark blue are all of our 10 marine nature reserves that we have, and the pale blue are the fisheries management zones, and this goes out from 0 to 3. So that means just over 50% of our 0 to 3 is protected with the marine nature reserves, which equates to about 10% of all our territorial waters, which is about 80% of the Manx territory. So, and they're protected from mobile fishing gear predominantly. But you can see Bulgham just here isn't actually within one of the M&Rs, so that's something that we're working with government to try and change. But the other sites are within the M&Rs, and they also have specific eelgrass zones, so they afford an extra special protection. So it started back in 2015, and we were asked to collect some data, basically some blade samples for analysis for the health of seagrass, and as a result of that, Jones and Unsworth produced a report in 2016, and it was samples were collected from all over the British Isles, and there was an assessment done, and our eelgrass showed quite well. We're very lucky on the island; we don't have too much nutrient input. Our rivers are relatively small compared to sort of some of the big UK rivers, I would say. So nutrient input is still was quite low, but we still found quite high levels, so it's very interesting. It's worth a read for those who are interested. And then in 2019, we collected some blades again for, this was for genetics, for DNA work, and that was with Project Seagrass and Swansea University. The aim was to see if we had a genetically diverse population of eelgrass, or whether it was, very similar. So we collected samples from Fort Island area in the south and Ramsey Bay in the north. Unfortunately, the samples weren't viable and they weren't able to test them. So we tried again in 2021, and we just took them from Fort Island. And this is the imagery here. Lee and myself went out and collected them to send away, and they'd slightly modified the methodology by then, so thankfully it was successful. And the eelgrass bed that we have in Fort Island is actually just ultimately one plant. They only found one DNA profile within that, so that whole bed is just one clone. And unfortunately we're not genetically diverse as we we thought we might have had a separate sort of subspecies, but as it turns out we haven't. We're linked with one of the other UK ones. But yeah, it's very interesting. It would be really nice to map some of our other areas and see if they're the same or different as well. So something to do in the future. So we're back in Ramsey Bay here. You can see Ramsey Bay is our only M&R that is divided into 5 zones. So this top zone is our horse mussel reef. This is our conservation zone in green. The tiny little pink box there is our seagrass meadow, and then we've got a rocky reef habitat here. And then half of the M&R is actually a fisheries management zone. The one thing that's, I think, is really beneficial about the Isle of Man is we work really closely with the fishing industry, and through that work, it was the fishing industry who suggested Ramsey as a marine nature reserve, and that the fishery should be closed. It was back in 2009 within Ramsey Bay to allow the scallop population to recover. And as a result of that now, it's the industry fish this in a very special way. Obviously it's very tightly controlled, but what we found as a result of this is that this is effectively acting as a marine nature reserve in its own right. They're only fishing in a couple of areas, so obviously we're getting things moving back in, and our scallops are so much bigger in Ramsey than compared to many of the other sites. So in terms of carbon footprint, there's less travel time for the fleet, and also they're catching larger scallops. They're getting their quota much more quickly, so the impacts on the seabed are a lot less. So it's a win-win for everybody, really. So it's really nice to see. But one of the positives that's come out of this, that in 2019, DEFRA, which is our environment department within government, went out and did a seagrass survey. So this is the Queen's Pier here, so it's an old Victorian Iiem pier that they're currently restoring at the moment. And as divers, we've been diving around there, and we were saying year on year that there's more and more seagrass at the pier. So they went out and decided to do a survey. So this little triangular box here is that little pink one that you see in the corner there. So this is the eelgrass zone, and this is how much it has expanded outside of it since the designation. I'm sure some of it was there before, but you can see with the reduction in fishing efforts within the area and anchoring that it has expanded hugely within Ramsey Bay, and they only surveyed to sort of here, so we think there's actually some more eelgrass that's going to be here. And this is really vital work as well, because there's the potential for a marina to be built within this area between the working harbour and the pier here, and we're finding that obviously that's extended into there, so there might be implications if the marina was developed. We've been talking to local divers, myself, Lee, Graham as well, and some of our other members of the team are keen divers back home on the island. We'd had reports by another local diver that they'd seen a few years previously in eelgrass in Vulcan Bay, and we thought, well, we better go and check it out. So we had some funding from Microgaming, which was really kind of them to help us do this work. So in 2021, with 3 dive teams, we went out and surveyed the area, and yes, we did find eelgrass, and quite healthy, prolific eelgrass. Unfortunately, as I said in that previous slide, it isn't protected in any way at the moment, so our next step is to lobby government to make sure that does get protected in some capacity going forward. I think we've been lucky that because it's quite an inshore site, there's no dredging activity there, but we did find plots very, very close to the area, so it's something that we need to look into. So the big exciting thing that we did last year was we were given permission from DEFRA to undertake a seagrass plant translocation project. So in this historic map, it was done in Port Erin. So this is Port Erin Bay here on the west coast, southwest coast. You can't see very well because it's a very old map, but the Zostra was found here and Zostra was found over here on this side of the bay. And we thought that would probably be the best place to translocate some mature plants to, rather than doing a seed trial. So last year in June, we decided we would have a go. So we took the plants from Fort Island Gully. It's an area that we know particularly well. It's very accessible from the shore. It's been dived a lot. So with funding from microgaming for this again, a bunch of divers, sea search divers, I'm pleased to say. Charlotte, you'd be very happy to hear that. Sea search divers all went out and we collected around 200 plants. And you can see from the example here, we obviously take some of the rhizomes, we brought them up to the surface, we trimmed all of the blades to a standard length of 30 centimetres so that the wave action wouldn't have the chance to sweep them away as quickly. And also it gave us the opportunity then to, as the bed developed, we could measure the length of the blades to see how much they were growing. So this is the site we transplanted them into. So basically we collected them all, cleaned them of epiphytes and anything like that, and trimmed them all down. Nice cool box, lots of cold seawater, transplanted them via the car all the way to the boat on the other side of the island in Port Erin, and we transplanted them there. We planted them, it was about a 2 metre square plot at 25 centimetre intervals, and we used little tiny chopsticks that we'd use with to help anchor them into the seabed. So we went back a month later and things were looking good. We had some growth within the blades and things like that. We went back in October and sadly we'd lost some of the area, so it formed this sort of L shape. And then finally when we went back in January, after some really bad storms, unfortunately we'd lost the whole site, which was really, really disappointing because I think it would have been more successful. But one of the things that we realised with hindsight was actually it was probably quite a mobile site. Even though Zostra had been there historically, I think the dynamics within the bay have probably changed a lot over time. Although it doesn't have any freshwater import, I suspect there must be other things going on in there. So unfortunately it didn't work, but we haven't given up. We've learnt a lot, and we will keep continuing with the work. But one of the things that we did do as part of that was to translocate back into the same location. So this is us collecting just a handful of plants back in Fort Island, and then this is obviously the little trial plot. But what we found with this site was because it wasn't sandy, it was much more mixed substrate. It was really, really hard to bury the plants to a depth deep enough, and again we lost them. But I think we've taken a lot from this, and the plan is we will try again, hopefully with permission from DEFRA in due course, to trial into another area within Derby Haven where we know we currently have seagrass as well, and we have these distinctive patches within Derby Haven. So the idea would ultimately be to sort of fill the gaps up, basically. But I'll talk a bit more about that. And then in 2021, with funding from KPMG, we developed the Manx Eelgrass group, so we're all Meg. So this was a photo of us taken on World Seagrass Day. We did a dive with some of the public to show them the eelgrass meadows within Fort Island, so it was a really great day. And through the work that we're doing with KPMG, we're going to be starting to do some more mapping work. So they very kindly sponsored us for a lot of our seagrass work going forward now. So we've begun our mapping, so again we're down sort of in Fort Island area down here, and through the divers, through Meg, we've been mapping our eelgrass beds within the area. So we've got about 8 or 9 beds that we've managed to find so far. We've still got some mapping work to do there, but as you can imagine, doing this with divers is quite a lot of effort and time. So we have developed a drop-down camera, thanks to Mel over in Alderney for her help and support with this. So this is our intern Alex, this is us trialling it. So we're hoping through this work to speed the process up a little bit, be able to drop the camera down and take videos. We want to look at things like abundance, so through percentage cover, what species we might be seeing, trying to look at the health of the eelgrass, having an estimate of sort of the length of the blades, you know, whether it's short, is it medium, are they tall, that kind of thing, to build up a very detailed map of our eelgrass, and then that can be repeated over the years going forward. Obviously, dropping something down onto the seabed, lots of things are going to get startled and move away. So we've just got funding this year in March from Sea Changers for a BRUV, so it's a beta remote underwater video, and you can see it's a bird seed feeder, but it works very well and effectively with putting some nice mackerel and things in there to draw some fish in. Hopefully this is a video that might work, I'm hoping. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
there you go. So really excited. We've only just trialled this recently, but that was sea bass. So we were really excited to see that within the eelgrass beds and some wrasse and some gobies and all sorts of things. So it was only one of the short videos. We had over an hour of footage, and I thought, no, I'm going to fit that into 20 minutes. But it gives you an idea. So we were really excited for that first trial. So the idea with the BRUV is that we'll be able to look at the diversity of species that are using the site and also the abundance of species. And this feeds into the work that we're doing with DEFRA. So they have a blue carbon team, and they're not just looking at eelgrass, they're looking at all our blue carbon, and they're working with Swansea and Knock and doing core sampling and looking at things like that. But one of the things they're keen to get an understanding of is what we've got, hence the requirement to do the mapping work, so we can actually say we've got X number of hectares of seagrass. But also they're very keen to look at the importance of the biodiversity associated with the eelgrass. So that's where we come in as well, to help with that through the BRUV and the drop-down work. So we're going to build up ways of doing that. But this will also come in really useful for monitoring the M&Rs and helping us to get a better handle on some of the marine nature reserve sites that we have. So just to give you a brief idea, this is what we're sort of thinking. The pale blue is the marine nature reserves, so we're going to do a couple of BRUVs in each of them, and then some in the outside as a bit of a compare and contrast. So we're just working out the final bits and pieces on that really. The other thing we've done here is we wanted to look at the extent of some of them. It's quite difficult, although we can map them, you know, GPS isn't as accurate as we maybe like. So this very small bed, I mean, it is tiny. We stuck 4 pins in it in February time on the outskirts of the bed, and then we went back in August to have a look again. You can't see very well, but you can see it's just starting to grow beyond the extent of it. So that's a really nice positive sign. So we'll continue to monitor that going forward. We've been really lucky as well through KPMG to be able to go and do some learning and sharing of knowledge with other areas. So we went down, Lee and myself went down to the seagrass nursery down in South Wales, Project Seagrass, so that was really, really fascinating. There is maybe a pipe dream one day that we may have our own, so it was really nice to go share some knowledge with them. And then Orsted are working with Lincolnshire and Yorkshire Wildlife Trust to plant intertidally 4 hectares of seagrass. So some of the Meg team and staff went down to have a look at that. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that trip, but that was, you know, it's great. This is what today is all about, isn't it? Sharing information and knowledge and things. So it was really, really positive. Thank you. I'm on my last slide. So future plans, basically continue mapping, and hopefully we want to try and find some new sites, look at abundance, health, biodiversity, and then from there we'll know whether we want to do a seed or plant translocation again, and on what scale, and do we or don't we need a nursery. And last slide, very last slide, some of our partners. Thank you very much.